Okay, we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, 25th, and our live discussion of Clare Ashton's Meeting Millie, which is the first in the Oxford romance series. We'll be discussing that this evening. And yeah, I want to apologize for how dark it is in my neck of the woods. Our air conditioner broke last year and we have yet to get it fixed. And so I am real warm right now. So I decided to not put our overhead light on in my room because I'm upstairs because my kids are still awake because, with the summer, it's harder to put kids to bed earlier because it's so light out. And my husband comes home from work a little later, so I do let them have a later nap. I don't know why I'm explaining this. Regardless, I'm upstairs. It's hot. I don't want to put the overhead light on because it's going to get warmer if I do so. So that's why it's dark where I am. So I apologize. But like I said, this evening we're going to be discussing Meeting Millie, which is the first in a series. And then typically at this point, we would discuss what our books for next month would be so that we would have a poll or we would have already done that. But what I'm trying to say is we're not having a poll for July. July was picked because it's my birthday month. And that pick is The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich. I have not looked if it's available anywhere, like on Hoopla or anything like that, because I own the copy, so I didn't have to go searching for it. But it is a pretty backlisted book, so you shouldn't have any difficulty finding it at your local library and whatnot. So yeah, I'm excited to read it. I haven't read an Erdrich in a little while, a couple years. But the last one I read was 5 stars, so I'm excited to read this one. Have you read any of her work?
No, this will be my first one.
Okay, awesome. I hope it's good. I've heard good things, and I've only really heard like one full review on it without having any spoilers, which was good. So I'm excited. I'm excited to read it. But
yeah, I would say it's got to be better than this book is that we're about to discuss.
Well, okay, so before we get into all that, you sometimes when you're reading a book and you're really like not getting into it, you often go to like Goodreads or other places where there are ratings and reviews and whatnot. And you did that in this case. What did you find when you looked up Meeting Millie?
So I did Goodreads and I did Storygraph. Those are the two places that I am. And then I also just Googled just generic reviews that would pull from kind of anywhere. And it was a pretty even split between like a lot of 5 stars, some 4.5s, and a lot of DNFs 1s and 2s. There were very few like 2.5s, 3s. It was like very split on either end of the 1 star, 5 star spectrum.
Yeah. I often wonder because this book was published in 2023, so it's fairly new. Mm-hmm. I wonder if a lot of like the 5 stars are from like people who were like gifted the book or requested to read the book. Because I feel like sometimes when you're asked to read a book, you kind of like give it more like leeway, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at that because I'm always like, oh, this person knows that I'm reading this book. They know I'm going to do a review. So now I feel like I got a radar on me, and I have to get better at that. I feel like I am getting better because usually I'd be like way off from what I felt, and I wouldn't be like, I'm honest, but also I'm like giving them the benefit of the doubt everywhere. So
yep.
Yeah. Okay. So anywho, if you are just joining us, make sure you say hello in the comments, and then obviously along the way, let us know your thoughts. But we're going to jump right into it and get this discussion on its way. If you are new to DoubleBookedCo and you're wanting to join our book club, you can join at any time throughout the year. You don't have to read any of the books. You can read one of the books, whatever you wish. We do have a Voxer group as well. And I'm also looking into, I just saw an ad and I joined it, and I'm kind of like looking at it, and then Laura and I will look at it together. And but Fable, which is completely new to me, but as I've been learning, it's been out for a while. I've never heard of it. But it's really, really supposed to be meant and built for book clubs. So I'm wondering if we transition from Voxer into this fable, because it does break the book up into chapters. So when you're discussing, you can actually put your discussion into the chapters. So Laura and I are going to do some investigating and see if this is worthwhile for our group. And see if we want to transition to that maybe at the beginning of next year. We'll like get through this year and then, so that we can kind of peruse it and see what the kinks are and see if it's really worthwhile for our group. But I did see that. So if anyone here has utilized that and yay or nay on the matter, we're not really on either side right now, but it's something that was brought to our attention. So we're going to start looking at that and see if maybe that'll work, maybe. So let us know if you've done anything with that. But as far as getting into the questions, we're going to get started right away. It looks like Cool Gamer's here.
Hello.
And we're going to start with our regular start, which is, if you were to rate this book, what would your rating of the book be? 1 out of 5, 5 being amazing. This is like your Goodreads rating, but obviously we can do halves and fourths and whatever we want because we can. But what would you rate it, Laura?
I DNF'd it, but I'm like hard DNFing, not NFNing, which is not for nowing. Sometimes you read a book and it's just not the right time for whatever reason. This is a hard DNF. I will not go back to the book. So I'm gonna give it 1 star just to rate it and be done with it, because I couldn't. I think I got 15 or 18%, and that was a struggle. Yeah. So yeah. What about you?
I did finish. I got all the way through it. I feel like I would have to give this book like a 2-star rating, like 2 or 2.5. For a lot of different reasons that we'll kind of discuss throughout. I don't want to get too involved in my answer because usually I answer all the questions in my overall thoughts. So yeah, I just think writing style, maturity, and thinking on romance novels in general, I would say of the romance novels I've read, I would give this in the 2 to 2.5. And I almost think because in our Voxer group, one of our members, Jules, mentioned what is a romance novel? What is, and then she had given a couple of different examples of books that she was like, are those romance novels? And in my head, I'm like, well, that's kind of romance, like Jane Austen books. Those are all romances, but they're not spicy romances. There's no, sexual there's sexual tension, but Elizabethan sexual tension. And then Time Traveler's Wife. It is a romance, but it's like a literary romance. It's a literary novel, but it goes around that romance theme of love and companion, that kind of stuff. This is considered a romance novel because its center is the relationship, and it has, for me, my definition, has sex in it. There's sex in it, so that to me is a romance novel. And comparatively, because I know you read way more romance than I do, and a way wider variety of genre than I do. But for me, and the ones that I have read, and I compare this one to those, I that's my rating is a 2. 2.5 to me feels generous.
Yeah, that feels generous for me too.
Yeah. Yeah, Andy's with us, and Andy also gave it a 2.5. So let's kind of get into maybe why we got there. From the percentage that you did read, what were your overall thoughts? and maybe compared to the genre in itself, like from others that you've read and were able to compare and be like, do I really want to read this book? What were your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I clearly did not enjoy it. I did check on Storygraph because that automatically breaks down all of your genres that you've read. I don't input that or anything. And of the 52 books or 53 books I've read this year, 21 have been romance. So, like, that's the majority of my reading, clearly. And like you said, all different kinds of romance all over the place. And this is the first one that I have DNFed this year. I think the writing was not very good at all. The descriptions of the characters alone, I know you and I talked privately about this too, but the descriptions of the characters were extremely inconsistent to the point where, as I went back, because I was confused about who was Millie and who was Clare. So I restarted after 10%. And every time they mentioned a character, I'd write down who it was and a description. And in those, like, first, again, 10%, Millie was both blonde and brown haired, and straight hair, wavy hair, curly hair. And the same thing for Clare. And I was like, well, how can they both have multiple kinds of hair at the same time? So just that alone, I couldn't keep anybody straight. And from their friendship point of view, because this starts out as I guess friends to lovers is one of the, like, tropes for this, I didn't buy their friendship right away. Like, sometimes you can have an immediate or very short introduction or explanation of how two people meet and they have a connection. I never really felt that at all. It was just like a literal stranger, literal best friend. Like, it was just instantaneous. And I didn't believe that. That's not a foundation for anything. I meet lots of nice people. That doesn't mean I'm their best friend suddenly, you know? I mean, that seemed unbelievable to me. Reading what everyone was thinking in our Voxer group too. And then also, when I was deciding to DNF it or not, reading a lot of the 1-star reviews that were out there. It was writing confusing, didn't make sense. It seemed like a lot of, like, insta love at the end. She went from, this is Millie, right, was the straight person. And I use straight in air quotes because she's apparently bisexual now. But it was just like this very bizarre instance where it was total friendship, absolutely nothing at all, to 100% romantic, sexual. And not that things can't be quick or can't catch you by surprise, but that seemed a little too quick for me and unbelievable. And someone did blurb the book, so I could read the instance where it happened. And I thought, well, I don't know. It just seemed very unrealistic in just about every way for me, and regardless of gender or not. I couldn't. I just thought, no, not doing this to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, going back to our reference to, like, what a romance novel is, Andy has put in the Wikipedia definition, and it says romance novel or romantic novel is a genre fiction novel that primarily focuses on the relationship and romantic love between two people, typically with an emotional, satisfying, and optimistic ending. I would say that's probably accurate.
Yep,
Andy doesn't
right.
read a lot, but BookTube has you reading some more. And she mentions too, and the curvy part, the description of the curvy, generous breast, generous. Like, I kept thinking to myself, like, I wonder what the definition of, like, generous means, because, like, my idea of generous is different from someone else's idea of generous. And even later in the book, when they finally get to business, they're so generous that they don't even need a bra because they're that plump and, like, perfect, like, that they just can sit on their own. And I'm thinking, okay, then that's not my definition of generous, because my definition of generous, like, they fall down when the
right. Yeah. You can hold things with them. Yeah.
Yeah, so generous. So okay, so my overall thoughts. So at first, I was really enjoying the atmosphere. Like, oh, it's Oxford. We have two people meeting at college, one's from humble beginnings, one's from like, the prep school kind of thing. And I thought we were going to see their friendship blossom. I thought we were going to see how they connected. And to your point, like, we didn't see that. We're supposedly seeing it through like these flashbacks and like chapters where explosive things are happening. But it's what we're seeing is just like that's already been built, and like, oh, look at what happened, and oh, look at how sad they are. And to me, everything was so immature. Everything, like the flashbacks and the present time, was just so immature for what was happening. And I specifically was annoyed by the fact that, like, why couldn't you just be friends? Like, why? I'm not saying like at the end, like when they do finally get together, that's great for them. But to me, I felt like Millie was so, like, she just wanted a friend. They were like so close, and she didn't want to do anything to lose her as far as a friendship goes. And then what the author did was basically was like, oh, no. The reason why you want her to be your friend so badly is because you're in love with her sexually. And I was like, she needed a friend. She wanted a friend. And it was like, well, if you can't have sex with me, then I don't want to be your friend. So then that's why they have a 10-year rift. And then even at the end, so now she's in, it was really annoying to me because I just felt like the road that the author took to make this friends to lovers really irritated me, because I felt for Millie. Like, I really felt like she needed a friend.
I'll be back.
Oh, okay. So anywho, I just really felt like she just needed a friend, and the author just like totally exposed it in a not so great way. And that really irritated me, especially when we find out later that she had, a miscarriage. And even in that moment, like, I don't know. So that's my overall thoughts as far as like the maturity level of the book in itself. I just felt really bad for Millie. Like she just really wanted someone who was a friend that she could confide in, and I don't know. And I think Allie in the Voxer group had mentioned this, but the intimacy between women is a little bit different than the intimacy between men as friends, that is. And Allie had mentioned, like, in most cases, women are closer. They're more intimate. And I totally agree with that. Like, a lot of my best friends, like, you share a lot more in-depth things. You are, more involved, I guess is the word I would say. And you just, there's an intimacy level between best friends. And I really enjoyed that. And I really just felt bad for Millie, because I feel like she wanted a friend the whole time. Then all of a sudden, Charlotte grazes her neck with her finger. And then all of a sudden she's like, I'm bisexual and I'm in love with my best friend. And I'm just like, I don't, why do you have to, why? Like, I get it's the story and that's the method it had to go, but I just feel like the author could have went a different direction. That's my thought there. I just didn't like that she was so, because here's the thing, if she wasn't so heavy on the fact that, like, Millie just wanted her friend and she wanted to keep this friend, then it wouldn't have been a big deal. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But she kept harping on the fact that Millie was just really wanted to keep her friend and didn't want to lose her friend, and friend. And it was like, all of a sudden when it was like the epiphany moment, it was unbelievable. It was just really, I don't know. The maturity level wasn't there. I didn't like it at all. So, Andy says, yeah, women can go on a trip and share a hotel room or a bed. Not sure men could. No, I don't think so either. Straight anyways, no. Mm-hmm. It depends on their level of, I don't know. Men are weird. I mean, we can't speak for all men. I'm sure are some men that would not feel awkward, but that's how the social aspect has built everyone's head into men have to be manly and can't do this, and women can be this. That's yeah. But anywho.
Sorry, I turned my wireless off. I forgot to turn it off before, and I thought, oh, it's going really great. And then all of a sudden, like, you just stopped talking, and it kept going, aing, aing, aing. I was like,
no.
So sorry. Hopefully it doesn't do that again. It shouldn't.
That's okay. It's all good. No worries. Yeah. So let's pop into our first more formal question. We kind of discussed this because I mean I'm always just discussing every question already. But first impressions. So what were your initial thoughts about Millie and Charlotte? How did your perception of them change throughout the book? I mean, obviously for you to not have finished, but I mean you can still kind of
yeah, they seemed
talk about first impressions.
Yeah, they seemed interchangeable in a weird way that they should not have been interchangeable. This really read like a first draft of a first novel for me, and I think this is like her third or fourth book. I think she has another trilogy or something out. I didn't look too much, but I did see in reviews people mentioning that they had read another series of hers. So I thought they were fine. They just seemed neutral, interchangeable, accidentally characters. I mean, very mid. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
So my first impressions, super confused as to who was who for like a real long time, because when they first, so obviously when you read this book, you, regardless of how you get it, if you get it as an audiobook or you get it as a physical book, you have a book cover, right? And in most cases, we all had the same book cover where it was a brunette, a tall brunette with like wavy hair and a short blonde, like Marilyn Monroe blonde, with like real curvy hips. And in the moment where Millie pops her head around the door in the dorm room and Charlotte's in the door, from that moment for like 6 or 7 more chapters, I had no idea who was who. I kept saying, okay, so Millie popped in, and I swear to God, they said mahogany hair and tall and lanky and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, so Millie is the brunette on the cover. Got it. And I feel like they said something about Charlotte being really like, because with her short hair, like a bob almost, like I feel like I read that. And
you did read that.
Nope, completely opposite. Millie is the blonde, the short blonde, and Charlotte is the tall brunette, which to me, the whole book through was not working for me. Like I was so confused, and the way that they read, I feel like it was flip-flopped like the whole time, and I was so confused. I was like, this doesn't read right. I'm not, because they kept referring to, I feel like they kept saying like Marilyn, like they kept referring to Marilyn Monroe. I'm like, but Marilyn is blonde. So why do you keep referring to Millie as this Marilyn character and then I'm like, okay, so Millie must actually be the blonde. You know what I mean? Like it was so confusing to be able to, like, so at one point I'm just like, okay, Millie's the straight one and Charlotte's the lesbian. Like I couldn't do it by looks anymore because I couldn't keep them straight. I was like, who is who? Who is who? It was so distracting that at one point I'm just like, I'm just going to have to be by what their orientation is because I cannot keep these people straight. And then, so the maturity level. So we immediately jump out of the meeting them to like 10 years later. And in that interaction, again, I'm like, who is who? Because they like describe each other from a room full of people away. And I'm like, wait a minute. I thought she was the blonde. Oh my gosh. I thought she was so annoying. So annoying. And that is the only male character that we meet who is of any virtue. Every single other male character we meet is basically a toxic character, which is like annoying, because I feel like that's trying to make a statement. And I was annoyed because of how hard I had to work to keep people straight. Annie says one time they described the outfits on the cover, like why, but were they correct? So, and that's the other thing. At one point, I'm like, well, maybe the cover art is incorrect, because at one point I thought they were both brunette, because I feel like they had described both of them with this mahogany hair. And I'm like, do you know what color mahogany is? Because you keep saying mahogany, and it's pissing me off because you're saying it for both of them, and it's brown. So who has brown hair?
I know. And when they're talking about that meeting in 10 years in the future, when they're at that dinner or whatever, and they're talking about what the other person's wearing across the room, I forget who was who, because again, I can't keep them straight, but one of the people is wearing a red dress, right? And they talk about this red dress like 3 or 4 times. And then one time they mentioned that the other person is wearing a red dress, like the 4th mention out of 5. And then it went back to, oh no, the other person's wearing a red dress. And I was like, what the? They're not both wearing red dresses. One of them is. You have to make up your mind. Like, so many errors. Stupid, basic errors.
Yeah.
Like, were there beta readers? Was there an editor? Has anyone, like, oh, made me so angry. Sorry. Just got so mad.
Andy mentions they're both too female-ish and too femme. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I related more towards the Millie character in reading because she was so charismatic, but she also had like a very humble background, so I liked that a lot more. Whereas to me, Charlotte was like a weepy baby. Like all she did was bitch and moan about everything, and never like stood up for herself until we see in the end she does stand up for somebody else. So being with Millie has given her more confidence and stuff, which is great because it's like an arc that she's on, and that's fantastic. But like I didn't see any arc for Millie. Like I feel like Millie was the same throughout, other than becoming bisexual by the end. So that kind of irritated me because I feel like there was no growth for Millie. Like there was no. So in college, she basically is just sex is on the high. She's sleeping with anybody. Well, men mostly. Well, always men, but a lot of men. And then she has a miscarriage in her, after school or whatever. And then she just cuts out relationships altogether. And then she all of a sudden has a sexual awakening when Charlotte, and like, I don't know, brushes her generous breasts against her back or something. And all of a sudden now she is in love with Charlotte. So for me, I didn't feel like there was anything for Millie. Like she was the same for me. She was very the same, which really hurt me because I really liked her from the get-go. And I was confused as to like, why is this book called Meeting Millie? When clearly there's 2 characters here, and Millie has no, like, I felt Millie had no arc. I felt she had no arc. Things just happened to her. Like, but she had no arc whatsoever. Like, sure, she stopped sleeping with people, but after a trauma. That's not an arc. That's a trauma. Like, she didn't grow from that. She literally just stopped doing anything. And then, yeah. Whereas Charlotte had an arc because of Millie. But why is it called Meeting Millie? Because I feel like we had like the same amount of like headspace from Millie and Charlotte. So to like have a title that's leans more towards one character just really it alters your mindset when you start reading. And it was frustrating to me because for me, I just think about the cover and I think about the title and I think like, how does this make you read the book? And yeah, I'm a little annoyed with that, but yes. Yeah. Let's jump into the second question here. So like emotional impact. How did the book make you feel? Were there any parts where you particularly emotional or relatable for you? And I put this question in here because it's supposedly a very emotionally impactful book. Like there's all these things that are happening, and and so much pent up love and everything. But like, is it? I mean, from what you gathered from the portion that you read, and Andy, maybe you can help us in the comments.
Yeah.
Like, what's the emotional impact of this book?
I can't imagine, quite honestly, just because it seems like such an immature book. And even though they're probably 30 or something, and everyone matures different times. I'm not saying that everyone has to be a super adult the second you turn 18. Obviously not. But like, it just seemed so immature. It just seemed, all of it just seemed very childish. So I don't know how that like could have a big emotional impact when they're so like unfinished and clueless, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, they're 28 in real time, because they mentioned that when they were in school, they had made a pact or something that if they both reached 28 and they weren't married, that they would marry each other, like hoo hoo ha ha kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which made me think of my best friend's wedding, because wasn't it 28 for them too?
It might have been.
Something like that. And I remember thinking, like, Julia Roberts, you're not 28.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
What was it? Dermot Mulroney. I'm like, they're not 28 years old. They're like at least in their 30s in this movie. I mean, Cameron Diaz, maybe she was 28.
Right.
But I always remember thinking too, when I saw that movie, like, that's really old. Like, they better, like, of course, wow, they that long to get married. And I didn't get married. Now hear me talking, I was 35. Like, yeah, times have changed. So Annie mentions there's so much focus on the physical.
Yeah.
I fall in love with a personality, not physical body, and it just annoyed me.
Right.
Yes. And I feel like, so I feel like the author could have done a better job with Millie's transition if she would have stuck more to the personality wise, because Millie was in love with Charlotte from the beginning. Let's just say that, as best friends are. She loved her. She did anything for her. She was always looking out for her. She was always, Olivia mentions how a boyfriend of hers said, I don't like you hanging out with Charlotte, so, it's me or her, basically. And Millie picked Charlotte, unbeknownst to Charlotte, of course. So Millie, of course, loved Charlotte from the get-go. They had been best friends. So I wish that the author would have continued in that vein and made it more about, like, love for love's sake, as opposed to, oh my gosh, Charlotte brushed me with her breast and I've not been with anybody for 4 years, and now I've had this sexual awakening, and now I'm into Charlotte sexually. So it became very sexual, because after that, like, moment, it was just ridiculous. I mean, every time they saw each other, it was voluptuous this and generous that. And if I read one more time about how a nipple pebbled, I mean, seriously, don't even start with me. And
that is the thing. Yeah, I know. I think of that too, and just regular romance where it's mentioned like once or twice. I'm like, really? Okay.
It's like the constant rhetoric of all of, like, every erotic whatever you can just push into, like, not a very big portion, because it's literally only like the last 3 chapters that any of this happens, because it's like the whole book is just about them. Will they, won't they? Because Millie's straight and Charlotte wants more than she is willing to offer. And, like, so it bothered me, because it was so physical. Andy's got it right on the head. Like, it was just, oh, physical this, and it frustrated me. And especially in the moment where Charlotte's like, I can't do this anymore, when they're in college, she walks into like a mixer or something, and she sees Millie kissing a woman. And I think she says something like, so that's what it's like kissing a woman or something like that. So all in good fun, like nothing, that's significant. And Charlotte just freaks out and is like, you'll F anybody but me, basically. And I'm thinking, yeah, so what? She's your friend. So if she wants to do that and she only wants to be your friend, that's pretty shitty of you to say we can't be friends unless we have sex. Like, I was shocked in that moment because I was like, who is the better friend here? Who is the better friend? So what you're saying is if Millie were to come out to you that she is bisexual, but she's not interested in you, then you can't, then you're not going to be friends with her anymore because she doesn't want to be with you. I'm pretty sure that it's okay for any sex to be like, oh, hey, I'm in love with you. And for that other person to be like, that's great, but I'm not attracted to you that way. And then what are you going to say? Well, then I guess we can't be friends. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You have such a bond and such a relationship, but if that friend turns out to like the same sex as you, that all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, but you don't want to be with me. Well, then I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. What?
I know.
That I was shocked. I was like, that is so ridiculous. We can't be friends unless you have sex with me. That's what I heard. Mm-hmm. That's what I heard. I was like, that's ridiculous. That's awful. That's just ridiculous. So, yeah. Married at 18, 1 star. Do not recommend.
Yeah. Well, that's how you find stuff sometimes when you do, do stuff.
Okay, so let me tell you something that I was like, so I was giggling a lot during the sex part because a lot of it I did feel was it was authentic because there was stuff in there that I was like, yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, I'd probably do that too because it's what women think. Like when we're having sex, like, I'm sorry, but our brains don't turn off. It's just kind of like, oh, well, what about, and what about? So I feel like in the sex scene, there were a few moments where I was like, yeah, I could see that happening. Like, you don't see that in sex scenes very often. And not to get too involved in it, but there was like talking, like, is this okay? And well, what about this? And so for me, I felt like the sex scene felt authentic, but to Andy's point, was stereotypical. Like I said, the pebbling of the nipples and like all these different things. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like I said before, like when the dress fell off and her breasts were so generous and whatever that they didn't need support. And I was like, what? Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something about breasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No generous breast is standing on its own. Okay. Maybe a smaller perky one, but not a generous one. So not a friend statement.
Right.
Oh, I see, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah.
No mention strap-ons. Yeah, I don't think they're to that point of their relationship yet. This is just, in the water. I did find it very authentic though too, like that. So they have their sexual encounter where they know how each other feels and whatever. And like Millie has to go to work or something. And like that whole day, Charlotte just can't stop thinking about her. So worried that like, oh, like she's not going to want to be with me. And then like Millie comes, she's got like a bag packed and she's like, I just can't be without you. And I was thinking like, again, the maturity level here, but like, this is how people are. The intensity is so real in those first moments that I'm like, okay, some of this feels authentic. Some of it does feel authentic. Because I remember when I was younger and you're in those first fits of like certain relationships, especially relationships that you didn't think were going to happen. And you're so, it's like a state of euphoria of like, oh my gosh, like this person really likes me and I really like them and we can't get enough of each other. And I felt like that was really like, that was relatable to me. That those little pockets, because you don't see that in romance novels a lot. You just kind of see like they move through the motions and like now we're on to the next part, you know. So I did appreciate those little nuances, but overall I felt it was just the the joke is, what is a lesbian second date unpacking a movie. You're funny. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So our next question, let's move on from there. This is a good one because it is a book we read for Pride Month. It does have 2 female characters as the love interest. So the LGBTQ plus representation. How did we feel like the characters and themes did in the book? Do we think it was handled well? I mean, for me, I think it was good. I liked that there were multiple like gay characters. You know, her friend Olivia. There is another woman that they meet, or that Charlotte meets through work, who kind of fancies her. So that's kind of like, I think the straw that broke the camel's back as far as getting Millie to actually say something. But other than that, I don't have a lot of experience reading a ton of these kind of books, so I don't know how to compare like if it was handled well, but I feel like the characters were authentic. I feel like there was and when I say authentic, I feel like their core was done well. Like Charlotte was a lesbian who wanted her best friend to be her lover. That's all. That's it. She was fighting being herself through the whole book of just being out as a lesbian, which she was, but like confident in it. And also wanting her friend to be her lover. That was basically her sole purpose through the whole thing. Millie was basically just her cheerleader the whole time. I don't think they handled her trauma well. I feel like it was like one little snippet of like, this is what happened to me. And then they like spoon for the rest of the night. And that's it. I didn't feel like that was handled well. But I don't think that has anything to do with, you know, the representation. What I felt was handled well was that it felt like an actual diverse cast of characters. A lot of times in books, like it's like all straight people and the one, you know, queer person, if there even is one in the book. And this one, it was a diverse cast. There was a married couple that was a man and a woman with babies, and the sister had children. There was a character who had represented themselves as a lesbian in college, but then married a man. So clearly, you know, bisexual or whatever. So you had that. And then you had the main characters. You had Olivia, who was gay. And then Richard, who was a toxic man. So like there was all sorts of characters. So I feel like there was good representation as far as like not being like leaning more one towards the other. I said before, I feel like some books it's like everyone, they're all straight. There's no diversity. So like there's diversity in this.
Yeah. I haven't read a book before, a contemporary especially, with a bisexual character, a main character. So I've read a lot of books where either if it's a man or woman, like either they know they are gay, they already know that they are bi, and it's not like an issue. They just mention like that I'm bisexual, like, and they're like them talking about themselves in their head when you're reading them the first time. Or someone is pretty sure, and then the book is about their like relationship or their entry into trying a gay relationship regardless of gender. And it's a lot of it is historical that I have read. So like people have already known and kept it secret that like, hey, I really like women, but they have a friend and they're like have to be cautious about, do you say something, do you not say something, like do we try something or not, like how much do you do so you don't get in trouble, and you can say it's a misunderstanding or whatever, because you have to protect yourself because you could get thrown to jail or killed. So I'm not sure about bi representation on this, because it seemed like a switch literally got flipped for Millie. And I don't know, but I think everything else, you're right, like it is a nice sort of subsection of all different gay, straight, bi couplings and singletons as well. It seemed decent, but I'm not sure about the bi thing. And I was reading an article about bi erasure for Pride Month, and I'd heard that like the bi erasure hashtag before, but didn't think too much of it. And then after reading that article, I was like, okay, yeah, holy shit, like sorry for swearing, but like no, it really is a thing that it's just not discussed about, and it's a lot of all the other alphabet letters, but not really bi so much. So I thought, I don't know if this is a great indication of this for bi people, because it's one person who had a switch flipped, versus questioning or trying things. And like, yeah, she did make out with a woman apparently one time, but is that like, that was a long time ago, and versus now, does that decade count?
Well, I don't know that I would really at first. So I don't really feel like she was bisexual, to be honest, because she only has eyes for Charlotte.
Right.
And she mentions at one point too, like, well, I guess I'm bisexual now. And I'm like, are you?
Yeah.
Are you?
Or are you just pansexual and it's just this person?
Yeah. I feel like
how much do you pick apart?
Like, literally just for Charlotte. And it was like the whole time I was reading it, I know I mentioned this to you, I feel like it was like kind of trying to tell the reader, like, if you wish long enough and hope long enough, your best friend will become your lover. Like, if you want it to be, all you have to do is keep saying, like, I'm not going to be your friend until, like, I just feel like it was, like, so... And now at the end, Charlotte does say, like, I just want to be with you, even if you don't want to be with me in the same way. I just want, like, I'm happiest when I'm with you. And I was like, that's very kind, but that's not going to last as long as you think it's going to last. Like, you think that you're doing something good for yourself, like, you're just going to live, like Golden Girl style with this woman. Like, yeah, like, you're not going to be able to live your life if sex is something that is important to you with your friend. If it just, I was like, well, whatever, you live your life and whatever.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
But back to Andy, she's making a lot of great comments here. She said, knows lots of lesbians, no couple that has two femmes. I'm sure that there are some, but so many books put two pretty femmy women together.
Yeah.
To two, so annoying. Yeah, I think it's because it's like aesthetically pleasing to the reader. I could care less. I was reading a romance novel for, the characters and whatever. I would want more of a authentic couple. Now, have that pairing ever happened? Probably. We don't know. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it's never going to happen and whatever. But to your point, like, it happens a lot more. And it's because it's like aesthetically pleasing. Like, people want to see two hot women. I mean, what's the age old, like, every guy's fantasy is two hot women, like, just that's what it is.
Big,
right?
Huge sigh. Right. I know.
Yeah.
Lesbians, I know too. It's not two femmies. It's never, ever. Sometimes it's like barely even one. I mean, I think I know one couple who broke up very shortly. That was one extremely feminine woman. And then the other was just, standard average person, like everybody else, Yeah. And every other couple I know. Yeah. Just regular people. No one's out here trying to be Giselle, I mean,
I don't. I think most people know they are attracted to same sex from a young age. I think that's very correct. I don't think people just like decide. I think it's always a part of you.
Mhm.
So when I think it was Olivia was like, I was like New Year's or something, she's totally going off about people like all of a sudden coming out and how like why aren't if there's so many people who are queer, then why aren't older generation, why aren't there more polling? She's like talking about polls and like surveys and stuff, and to that point, yes, it's more acceptable. It's not easier. I'm not going to say easier because I can't speak to that, but we live in a time that is better for people to be able to be themselves. And so to a certain extent, the Olivia character, I was like, okay, she's got a point, but she's also like got to ease up on being so crabby. But I'm a firm believer that people know. I mean, it's just in you. It's just a part of you. It's not, I don't know. I don't feel like you just decide. It just is. So.
Yeah. One of my good friends just recently outed themselves, told me that they were attracted to both genders. And I was like, okay, that's great. Do you want to like order coffee or something? Like, I was not surprised. I don't care. I was like, are you happier now? Like, do you feel better? How do you feel? Like, do you feel good? Great. What else is new? Like, I just didn't care. I think they were a little like, like, I'm really sorry. I've known you for a very long time. This is not super surprising to me, at least. Like, I'm happy that you're happy. But yeah, I mean, I'm in my 40s, and just recently they were like, well, I'm going to try this. Something I've always wanted to do. And like, great. Hope it works. Like, go do it, girl,
Yeah. Being bi-curious is different than being lesbian. I don't think Millie was even bi-curious. Yeah. Her character really reminds me of the character in Brokeback Mountain, who the character played by Heath Ledger. Like, I feel like the Jake Gyllenhaal character, definitely gay. Like, he was with multiple men throughout the entire story. But Enos, who is the character that is played by Heath Ledger, only had eyes for Jack. Just who is the Jake Gyllenhaal character. Like, soulmate. Like, for like full on soulmate. I love that short story. I love the film. I think they did a tremendous job. But I feel like maybe that's what we have here with Millie too. Like, that was what I was kind of going through my head, is like, oh, this feels a lot like how I read, that character in Brokeback Mountain. It was just very much like soulmate kind of thing. So yeah. I knew I liked women as a teen, still married a man, told him he was 35 when it came out to everyone else. Yeah. I think that's a common story with a lot of people, especially because of the time, like what time is like what the world is like, because unfortunately the world totally affects our decisions, the social norms and all of what we're supposed to do. So, it's I don't want to say common, but it is, you hear that a lot. I went to college, and a friend of mine who was completely out as a gay man was like having an affair with a married man. He was married to a woman. And I was like, okay, first of all, this is like so wrong. Because he's married. Like, I don't care that you're together, but one, he's not out, and he's married. Like, come on. So yes, people get married and they continue on because probably that's what they're supposed, that's what they're supposed to do, or they feel like they can't, come out to anyone, and they just live their lives for the longest time. Mary Flum Peterson wrote a book called White Dresses. She is a Wisconsin-born journalist, and her father was a gay man. Came out to his mother. They ended up getting divorced and everything else, but like completely, they got married and had kids, and then finally he was just like, unfortunately, I need to move on with my life, and It is. You hear about these things all the time, and it is. I feel like it's the world crushing down on people and stifling them. And I mean, we still see it today. It's a huge issue. And realistically, we need to just let everybody live their lives. Like, be who you are and move on. But people don't let other people be who they are. People like to be involved in matters that do not involve them. So, yeah. That's okay. Yes, it's a fantasy. Okay. The last question that's like a firm, like the long question. We have recommending the book. Would you recommend Meeting Millie to others? Why or why not? What type of reader do you think would enjoy a book the most?
Yeah, no. I mean, I would talk about it with people and not in like a listen to this turd. Like, I wouldn't do that. But in a like, I tried reading this book. I did not like it. There's a couple like hints of why I didn't like it. Nothing to do with what it was about or anything. It's just purely like the writing. But a lot of people gave it 4 and 5 stars. So try it if you want to try it. But super, no, not for me. I will not be recommending this.
Yeah.
You?
I feel like if I was 10 years younger, like their age group of this book, like 28, maybe I would have read it differently and I would have felt like it was more relatable and I would have enjoyed it more. But I feel like as a more experienced reader, especially of like literary and romance novels and quite frankly erotica, because some of this got a little erotic, I feel like the author was trying to do too much because a lot of it read very literary, like contemporary literary romance, like just talking about a relationship. But then it got so like physically ridiculous as far as descriptions, and it just didn't feel right. And then all of a sudden it went like full on sex scene, and I was like, why? We already know they're together.
Right.
Why are we dealing with this like full on steamy crazy sex scene when there's nothing else that comes after this? There's no like anything coming after this. No climax. Well, I mean climax, but there's no like there's nothing.
Right.
This is the end of the book. Why are we putting this here? We don't need it. We don't need it. We know they're together. But you've built up this like these physical descriptions so much that now you have to. And I feel like it was really ridiculous. Like most romance novels that I read, like you have it where it's like a roller coaster. You're like, we're gonna get up there, and then they're like, bang, something happens, and it's like, oh shit. Oh, okay, now we're okay now. But this one was just like, here we go. You're still going. We're still going. Oh, it's the end now. Boom. Woohoo! Aren't we happy? And I'm like, no, we're not. Like, I wasn't really looking forward to that at all. Like, I didn't need it in the book at all because you've already accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish in this book. But now, again, you've made it about sex. So, congratulations. So, as far as recommending this book, I probably wouldn't recommend it to anybody that is a mature reader. I would, like, if somebody asked me, like, do you know of any sapphic novels that, you know, are like my age group? I'd be like, yeah, there's this one that's kind of like YA, but it's kind of steamy. Like, it's pretty steamy. So beware of that. But it's not until the very end. But I don't think I would recommend this as like a, yay, read this book. No. Oop. Oh no, what did I do? I just clicked on something because it popped up. Oh no, go away. I don't need no security. Okay. I'm sorry, Andy. Your comment where I ran away. Oh, yeah, it was a good discussion though. Yeah, it was. If I'm invested in the characters, do not mind. Loved One Last Stop. And it had some steamy scenes, but this one, ugh, yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with steamy scenes. I'm fine with it. I enjoy a good steamy scene. Like, you know what I read in my off time. But this felt like so like pointless. It was unnecessary. It didn't need to be there.
I know. I think maybe like a month ago I read Delilah Green Doesn't Care, which you and I had talked about as one of our choices for this month. But they kept listing like steamy and stuff like in the basic descriptions, and I was like, well, I don't want to do that. If it's all they talk about, and like, you know, sex scenes are one thing, but like if it's the main thing, I didn't know. So I just checked it out and read it anyways. I think Andy read it almost at the same point as me. I think Andy did not like it, and I liked it very much. Both the characters, it's the same length novel, essentially 400 pages. Yep, that's what I thought. Like both the characters are absolute a-hole jerks in the beginning. Like they really are. But something about like the writing was decent, and I felt really compelled. It was very easy for me to read the whole thing in like a sitting or two. I mean, I just blitzed right through it, and there was great character development between these two women, not only with their relationship and their friendship and how that evolves into a relationship, but also them individually. Like you really get to know them, and you see why like they were a-holes or they were jerks. Like it's explained, it's understandable. I enjoyed that so much more. And then I read this thing and I was like, what the no. No. Like this didn't have to be 400 pages. There's no reason for it. Because so much of it was just a lot, right?
Yeah, it was just a lot of just the same thing. Like, I'm in love with Millie, but she's not in love with me. We can't be friends. I'm in love with Millie, but she's not in love with me. But I want to be friends now. I'm in love with Millie, but she's not in love with me. I'm just going to deal with it. Like, it was just, it was so annoying. It was so annoying. Yeah. And I don't think, like, I'm not trying to say, like, because this is two females. No, I love a good relationship story. I love a good love story. I don't care who, if it's two guys, a guy and a girl, whatever it is.
A couple's a couple.
Yeah, a couple's a couple. I like to see their development and all this thing. And to me, it was just like, I felt like Millie just needed a friend. Like, especially in the moment where she talks about her trauma, like her miscarriage and stuff. Like, I was like, this girl just needs a friend. She just needs someone who is not trying to get in her pants, who is trying to, you know, encourage her, like, and all of these things. And I don't think I felt like Charlotte never did any of that. It was always Millie. Right. Millie was always trying to, you know, push Charlotte up and always trying to keep Charlotte all confident and everything. And even Olivia says it too, like, oh, Millie's always been the one that's taking care of you and all this shit. And I'm like, okay, but that's what friends do.
Right.
So I don't know. I just feel like the author went too deep with the friend thing that it was like, yeah, you can do friends to lovers, but I mean, this is like, Millie really just needed to and deserved a real friend. Like, didn't have like a sexual, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not vendetta, but like that's all Charlotte was thinking about was like, I want to go to bed with Millie. Like, it just was annoying. So, anywho, that's my thought on that. But I think the real kicker was the fact that I couldn't keep these people straight like throughout most of the book.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Any additional topics that you'd like to cover regarding character, plot, story?
Nope. Glad it's done. Sorry.
I'm trying to think if, I mean, we really did cover a lot because there really isn't much else in the book. Because it was all the same. It was just all samey, dealing with the same thing over and over again. And then, yeah, a lot of it was like just too much, and I find it interesting. So a lot of, so when kind of looking and figuring out just discussion questions, I often go online. And now I'm really into this ChatGPT thing. That's amazing. And often people are like, oh, if there's a sequel, what do you think the sequel will be? And I'm like, well, in a story like this, most likely the main characters will not be Millie and Charlotte.
Right.
Chances are, because there are so many other characters, the next book is probably going to be about Olivia.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I am more interested in Olivia. She felt like a very complex character, who is hiding behind some kind of shield of like, don't mess with me kind of energy. And I'm interested in that, but I really don't think I'll read this because I just didn't like the writing style and the maturity level of the book. But I mean, I was, at first you don't like Olivia because she's kind of a witch.
Mm-hmm.
But then by the end of the book, you're like, okay, she's just really being, mama bear like with Charlotte, which that was another thing that really irritated me. Like, Charlotte is this like mouse that everybody has to protect. Like, oh, Charlotte, oh, protect Charlotte, oh, poor Charlotte. I'm like, poor Charlotte. Charlotte is the tall, wonderful hair, generous this, generous that, comes from this remarkable family, like mom's a barrister, like prep school, all this stuff. And we're saying poor Charlotte? What? That's why I was so that's like I felt like Millie would have been like the other, you know what I mean? Like I was annoyed. It was all very confusing. It's very confusing. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all we're going to discuss on this one. I think a lot of those 5 stars may be coming from readers who are more in the lower 30s, late 20s, or even early 20s, just because I think the maturity level of this book is more tuned to those readers. And maybe a lot of those 1 stars are just readers that are way more versed in romance novels and development of characters and relationships or whatnot. I was reading, or am still reading, Beauty and the Mustache by Penny Reed while I've been reading this book. And the difference is just, it's like night and day as far as, how these characters come to be, how they, get to know each other and find that they are interested in each other. And there's no like, oh, I can see the bulge through his pants and it's so generous. And you know what I mean? Like, just, it's just not, I don't like, here's what I don't like. And I don't know if it's maybe just that says something about me, but like a lot of the times I do not like how women are described in books. I don't like, I feel like it's so like, where are all of the normal looking people?
I know.
Like, because, we talk about not seeing ourselves in books and we want to see ourselves in books. I never see myself in a romance novel. I can tell you that right now. Like, all these women with their curves and their how this looks and how that looks and hair. Let me tell you, these people have some great hair.
I know. I will never have excellent hair like that. Even if I had a glamour shot back in the 90s, it would never have been as voluptuous and curly.
I just, and even in romance novels that I feel are good and I feel like are exceptional, I'm still like, I cannot stand the descriptions of female of the women. It's so annoying. And two, even some with the men, like in the book that I'm reading, Beauty and the Mustache, like they keep referring to him as like a Viking. And I'm like, can you get a different description? Right. Say it once. Why are we saying, like, this is like the 5th freaking time you have mentioned.
Once is fine, twice, like, okay.
Oh, he's his Viking like stature. And I'm like, do you really know what Vikings look like? Because I guarantee you, I'm not attracted to a Viking. I'm not. Nope. All I'm seeing is like nasty teeth and like,
it's all just like sexy Vikings, like the show Vikings. Like, that's not how people looked,
No. Nope. Yeah, I missed the great hair, but
I think every person
hair.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. That. Like, I want to see a description that, like, oh, she rocked a good flip flop. Like, you know what I mean?
She didn't care that these capris were out of style. She was comfortable, and that's all that mattered. Damn it.
Yeah. She wasn't ready for me, so when I pulled down her hipsters, like,
Right.
all these women, like, I'm sorry, but let's just be real. You gotta know when you're gonna go to the downtown because you want to make sure that you've gone to the car wash. If y'all know what I mean. Okay?
Right.
So, like, it's not like these people aren't just like, I'm ready to go, or I feel confident to be ready to go. Like, no. No.
Right.
No. That's not what happens.
Yeah, most days you just wake up and you're just doing whatever. And a business meeting for a downstairs handshake is not usually like, oh yeah, this is happening today. No.
Yeah, no. Anywho, okay. So that's all we're gonna say on that book this evening. Yeah. But next month we are on to a different genre. We have The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich. Our reading sprints for that are going to be next week, Tuesday, which is the 2nd of July. We'll have our new products and whatnot at 8, and then we'll start reading sprints at 8:30. And I will actually start the book that night because I have the physical book. I haven't had the physical book in one of our books in a very long time, so this will be new for me. But yeah, so that's when you'll see us next, is next week, Tuesday, when we'll do some reading sprints for our book. Till then, I hope you all have a great night. And if you're watching this in replay, feel free to comment on anything we have mentioned, and be kind, obviously. We love you too.
We love you too, Andy. Thank you for being here and chatting with us about
Yeah.
this not great book.
Yeah. I wanted it to be good.
I know.
Because I wanted to read something fun and whatever, and I didn't get that from this. So, but it happens from time to time.
It does. That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, all. Well, have a great night, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. Bye, everybody.